All right, and we are live. We're live, guys. Welcome to another episode of Good Morning Liberty. My name is Michael Boldin. I'm here with the 10th Amendment Center, broadcasting live to you as we do every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 9:30 a.m. Pacific time here on the West Coast in Los Angeles. So good morning to you, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you happen to be tuning in, whether it's live or in the archives. I really appreciate you being here with me today. Of course, as a reminder, smash that like button if you like what we're doing and you're watching, you're enjoying, you find it interesting, even if it pisses you off. But if you're watching and you keep coming back for more, hit that like button. It helps us get the word out to other people. And if you want to get notified on YouTube where we do the live stream, not only do you need to hit subscribe, you will get notified once in a while if you just hit subscribe, but there's a little bell button that you see, and if you click on the bell, you'll get a couple of little lines outside of it, at least on the desktop, and that will give you notifications of all of our videos. Again, Good Morning Liberty every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. And then every couple of weeks, at least this time of year, we do a Tuesday episode. Mike Meharry, our National Communications Director and probably top writer, we do a discussion about some current events, like a podcast style. We do some interview discussion about various things. So yesterday we talked about massive spending and an increase in the surveillance state. And then about once a week over the weekend, I do a short video. I publish a video from either Mike or myself talking about a specific topic. So I'm rambling on that. Again, thank you so much for being here with me today. I want to talk about asset forfeiture. And there was some big news from the Institute for Justice talking about beating back the Philadelphia asset forfeiture machine, which is one of the worst in the country. So let's go over this and look at their press release, which came out actually last week. It says, Institute for Justice dismantles Philadelphia forfeiture machine. After 4 years of litigation, city agrees to end policing for profit, ensure due process, and establish $3 million compensation fund for victims of the city's forfeiture practice. Now, civil forfeiture, and I got to apologize if you guys hear some construction out the window today. I don't know how well this microphone is picking up stuff. I've got these double-paned windows, but sometimes it's right outside my window here. There, it's gone. That's live. That's what makes it entertaining, right? So, civil forfeiture is where the government can seize and sell your property without convicting or even charging you with a crime. And IJ, Institute for Justice, which is one of the leading organizations pushing back on this, taking action, whether it's legislative or litigation, they consider it one of the greatest threats to property rights today. In short, civil asset forfeiture is when they charge your property with a crime. It's guilty until proven innocent. So, for example, a cop pulls somebody over, and I'm going to give a kind of an obnoxious or probably unlikely situation, but maybe this happens. Person's got a wad of $100 bills sitting on their passenger seat, and the cop says, oh, well, that could only be drug money. And they don't need probable cause at all, but they still take it. And then you have to prove that you're innocent. It wasn't used in a crime to get that property back. They may take the car, whatever. Hi to Dan Warsaw, loud and clear here. I'm not sure if that means the construction is loud and clear, but hopefully I am. If we got a little background hum, that maybe makes it a little more entertainment. Thanks for being here, Dan, and for the comment. I appreciate it. So they're basically charging the property with a crime. It's guilty until proven innocent. They take your stuff, and then if you can go through a process and prove that you did not use that property in a crime or that property was not a participant in a crime somehow, then you might get it back. But in general, people do not get their forfeited property back. And so going through the Philadelphia system, which is considered one of the worst on the big city level, here in Los Angeles was always terrible too. But for decades, they say, Philadelphia, oh, Dan says, I'm coming through clear. Okay, that's good. So maybe the proximity to this microphone is helping out over the background sound. So for decades, Philadelphia's system was rigged against property owners until IJ, Institute for Justice, brought suit. They're at ij.org, and I will post this link in the show notes. Philadelphia routinely threw property owners out of their homes without notice. It forced owners to navigate the notorious Courtroom 478, where so-called hearings were run entirely by prosecutors, without any judges or court-appointed lawyers to defend property owners. You're just basically going into an ambush. They would demand that people come into a court over and over and over, and if you missed it, I mean, people could be asked to go into court like 10 times. And they say missing even a single hearing, and I like how IJ puts it in quotes because it's an administrative action. It's not, it's a whole different realm in the legal world, meant that prosecutors could permanently take an owner's property, sell it, and use the proceeds for any law enforcement purpose they wished. Aviator Tom says this is already illegal according to the 14th Amendment. It's illegal under a bunch of things. So yeah, it is government theft, and the whole process is pretty bad too. So the case that IJ brought up started in 2014. It's a guy named Chris Surovalis. Oh, wow, I got to get better at these names. He nearly lost his house after his son was arrested for selling $40 worth of drugs. So his kid violated a state or a local law, maybe a federal one, $40 worth. This is not a massive crime. And if you believe that he should be punished under the law, I don't know the circumstances, but if there's no violence or there's no victim and if it was a voluntary exchange, I think that's a different story. So they say, although Chris did nothing wrong, the owner of the house, the police end up showing up and unannounced one day and threw his entire family out of his home. So they're basically saying that the homeowner, if the kid was living there or visiting there and using the house as a base of operations, this is how crazy it would get in Philadelphia. Well, this house is up for forfeiture because it's part of the drug syndicate, this guy that was arrested for $40 worth of sales. So it's a 4-year lawsuit. They sued to oppose this, and finally they came to an agreement just last week. And this is the press release that we're reading here from Institute for Justice. And it has 2 legally binding consent decrees. I don't know what a consent decree is, but basically they're consenting to that they're going, I don't know. Someone could probably tell me. One governing Philadelphia's forfeiture practices and another providing compensation to victims. So in the first, and this is a big deal, because most of the time if you were to try to go to a court, the judge is never going to be on your side. So good for IJ for pushing forward for 4 years. I wonder how much it cost them in legal fees. So in the first decree, consent decree, it would do these things. It would generally restrict when police can seize money and other property for forfeiture. So it's cutting it probably back significantly. Generally, IJ, at least from my work and my experience in reading their work and following it and actually partnering them on some things, they tend to like at least 80% cutback. So this is going to be a big cutback on the Philadelphia asset forfeiture program. It will improve the notice which owners receive about the process and their rights under it. It will ensure that judges and not prosecutors can control the forfeiture proceedings and monitor forfeiture settlements for fairness, and will prohibit prosecutors from making owners return to court again and again at the risk of losing their property forever, and create a prompt and meaningful hearing where property owners can demand the immediate return of their property. I think, and I don't know, certainly anytime they're taking property and keeping it without a conviction, that's problematic. I don't see that they have a criminal conviction requirement in this. I guess I'll have to research it a little bit more and get back to you. Generally, IJ is very trustworthy, so if they're saying it's positive, it's probably got something good like that. So we'll have to look into it a little bit further, though. So the second consent decree, it ends their unconstitutional financial incentive. So basically what they're doing is they're taking this money, and as Aviator Tom says, one word, taxes, they don't, it's amazing with all the printing and the taxation that goes on. Mind you, it was like a 2% tax on tea, some tiny amount that the founders and the founding generation ended up revolting against. A tiny tax on tea. And now we're looking at, if you compile all the taxes, federal, state, local, sales, property, fees on your cell phone bill, on your electricity, all these different things, the gas tax, I've seen people say that it's high as 55% of the average person's income. So we are taxed to death, and people who say TEA means taxed enough already, the taxes are way too high. So think about all the money that government at various levels collects, and then think about the Federal Reserve printing money out of thin air over 100 years, 105 years now, going insane, devaluing the currency, and they still are having budget shortfalls. If anything would tell you that these people are totally out of control, that should do it. But they still don't have enough money. And in fact, when another state put in asset forfeiture restrictions, there were complaints from law enforcement that they wouldn't be able to meet their budget because they're using this to pay salaries. And we get into this. I think, at least from what I was reading here, that Philadelphia was paying like 35% of salaries, or 35% of it was going towards salaries. So if you're paying people's salaries to do asset forfeiture and then collecting the money to pay people's salaries, it's a really vicious, nasty cycle. And this really is a form of stealing. It's robbery, armed robbery in my books. So this decree, the second decree that IJ got in this agreement, blocks the DA's office and the Philadelphia Police Department from using forfeiture proceeds on salaries or other law enforcement purposes. So let me see. I don't know if it actually says the amount. But they say this comprehensively reforms the largest municipal forfeiture program in the country. Now, again, I think it's really important that it be based on a criminal conviction. I'm going to assume that IJ pushed for this. I will have to look into it, and if it turns out that that's not it, then it's not a really strong reform, but they are saying it completely reforms it. I'm assuming they're going for a criminal conviction in most instances. Justin Bayola, absolutely right. Asset forfeiture is theft, robbery, ripoff, a scam, whatever you want to call it. So let's say they have, let's just go with the assumption that it is the strictest reform on asset forfeiture, basically eliminates it in almost every situation. Let's say it eliminated in every situation in Philadelphia, or even under the whole state. There is a looming problem that's still it's a dark cloud over any effort like this. And it comes from the federal government, and it's known as the Equitable Sharing Program. This is actually the federal asset forfeiture program, something that supposedly Barack Obama scaled back, but he really didn't. And supposedly Jeff Sessions rescinded Eric Holder's basically, it's a federal asset forfeiture program that's been going on and on and on, no matter what the media tries to tell us about which team is trying to make it better or worse. They've all been bad. But here's the issue. It really ends up being an end run around even the best restriction or elimination of asset forfeiture on a state or a local level. So if you only address the state or a local level, you end up with a huge problem. So let's go through this. I'm probably not making sense, but Mike Meharry did a report on this early last year. Well, why can't I close this thing? I'll just scroll past it. He did, let me just close that guy. Okay, cool. So when Jeff Sessions announced that he was rescinding the previous administration's approach to asset forfeiture, and Trump himself really praised asset forfeiture, people thought they were really going to ramp it up. They probably have been. It's always bad. And even if they don't ramp it up, the status quo is terrible. So it's this thing called equitable sharing. And as Mike reported, he says the U.S. Department of Justice issued a policy directive on federal asset forfeiture, directing the federal government to aggressively seize property even if they never charge the owner with a crime, including in states that require a criminal conviction to complete forfeiture. That's interesting. So a state or a locality, let's say Philadelphia, let's take Philadelphia. Let's say Philadelphia says no asset forfeiture without a criminal conviction. but they don't address the fact that there is this federal asset forfeiture program. The federal government is going to come in and mess things up. And I guarantee you that Philadelphia police and the Philadelphia government will partner with them. They will do asset forfeiture anyways. And here's how it works. Under the federal law, and this is called the equitable sharing program, under the federal law, state and local police, we should put law in quotes because this is an unconstitutional, immoral, unjust act. But under federal law, state and local police can pass asset forfeiture cases off to federal prosecutors. Once the feds adopt a case, the forfeiture then moves forward under federal law, often affording less protections for individuals than state law. By placing the case under federal jurisdiction, state and local law enforcement can bypass more stringent provisions under state law, such as the requirement for a criminal conviction, and can collect up to 80% of the proceeds from forfeited assets under the federal equitable sharing program. I'm not sure if that makes sense. It seems kind of convoluted. But here's what happens. A state or a locality ends asset forfeiture. The county commission, city council, state legislature, governor, whatever it may be. There's a law that says there is no more asset forfeiture in this jurisdiction. Well, the federal government says, well, hey guys, guess what? We've got this equitable sharing program, just so you know. If there happen to be any cases that are federal in nature, let us know about it. And certainly will help you out, 80%. So what happens is, and this was really very prominent here in California, of all places, the state of California had some of the, if not the strictest restrictions on asset forfeiture in the country. Up until 2015 or so, 2014, it was number one as far as the best, maybe number two or number three, but at the top. But it only addressed state and local asset forfeiture. So what would the LAPD do? If they pulled somebody over and they found some illegal substance that was illegal under state law, they knew they couldn't impound the car. They were told specifically that they couldn't impound the car, take the person's property, go to their home, go to their dad's house, take their dad's house under state law. So what would they do? They would call up their federal partners in the DEA or the FBI and say, you know, we've got this case here, and we think it might be an interesting federal one. So the federal government, then they would pass the case off. The federal government would determine if they were going to adopt the case. The feds would then take the case. The locals would do all the groundwork, or a vast majority of it, in doing the arrest, the seizing, the prosecution, but under basically in a partnership or a task force or an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, working as federal agents for the federal government. The federal government then seizes it. They don't have to follow the state law requiring a conviction. The federal government takes the property. The person can't get it back. They liquidate it, and then the locality gets 80% of the proceeds. And that is the danger of the federal equitable sharing program, which is in effect. It has been in effect for a long time. The Obama administration used it, pretended to cut it back. The Trump administration with Jeff Sessions have gone along with this whole fake, this lie that Obama cut it back and that they were ramping it up to support the police because they support law enforcement, and law enforcement needs this tool to get terrorists and drug dealers. At least that's what we're told. So they're really, all they're doing, and in LA, all through California, they went crazy with this. They just recognized that if they tried to do it under state law, they tried to do the forfeiture. They saw stuff. Oh, we can take a car, a boat, a house, cash, whatever it may be, phones, jewelry, businesses. If they tried to do it under state law, they'd have to go to court. They'd have to deal with a lot of fighting back from organizations like the ACLU or IJ because it's illegal under state law. Maybe they would get away with it. Maybe they would win. But why even go through that hassle when the Department of Justice and the FBI on the federal level are saying, hey, just give us the case. we'll have a couple of pencil pushers, put it into the system, and then it's a federal case, and you'll have a case officer, a federal partner that you can reach out to, and they will give you direction, and you're still going to get the money. So while California had the strictest or close to the strictest state-level restrictions on asset forfeiture, it was the worst. It was number 50 in the country as far as accepting federal equitable sharing funding. Surprisingly enough, and we worked with a large coalition of organizations, left, right, center, far left, far right, from Oath Keepers to a Green Party. We worked to get that loophole shut in about 80% of the situations. So in about 80% of cases, starting in January of 2017, California closed that. So they took a very strong lead on this, along with states like Nebraska, New Mexico. Ohio has taken a small step towards that. Arizona, and I think one other, but have addressed not just the state level, but the federal equitable sharing program. It's very easy to nullify the federal equitable sharing program because they don't actually have to say, well, we're going to arrest feds or we're going to have to block a mandate from being enforced. Some of these federal laws are so kind of entangled in the financial system that it becomes very difficult logistically, although it can be done. It just takes a lot more backbone. But logistically, it becomes very difficult to pull off. Equitable sharing, like Common Core, is a very easy one. I should say that with a grain of salt. It's not easy because the politicians suck on the state level, too. They're bad. They want more power. They like the money. They have bad foundations, bad philosophy. But as far as the logistics, it is the mere withdrawal saying we're not going to participate in this program, and then it's done. Justin says, thanks for the tanks. Yeah, hey, feds, here is some payback for all the federal millization grants. This is the 1033 program and the federal JAG program works the same way. A number of states like Montana and New Jersey have taken steps to withdraw from that. So it's the same type of a situation. You can just opt out, not participate, and it's as if the federal program doesn't exist anymore because the federal program only exists to bribe states into doing stuff for the feds. Now, we know that the states are really bad too, but if a state like California, everybody calls us California here, if a state like California can not only restrict asset forfeiture on a state and local level, but also opt out of a vast majority of the federal program, then why can't Philadelphia and all of Pennsylvania do that? Montana turned down tanks and 50 caliber rifles. They turned down all kinds of stuff. I'd actually have to, maybe I'll report on that one as well, kind of cover that whole process as well, Justin. But most don't like turning down equitable sharing money. They don't like turning out equipment. There's a sharing program with surveillance gear, drones, stingrays. The feds really, and we've been doing a lot of research behind the scenes, the feds, most of the worst state and local programs are actually funded by the federal government. And Justin says, Montana's probably already have theirs already. Well, it doesn't actually play out like that. The law was pretty comprehensive. They basically had to destroy stuff that they had accepted in the past. They couldn't use grant money to buy stuff on the open market. Every now and then we see a really good win, and the Montana law was a very good win and a step forward there on militarization. But back to asset forfeiture. The states can't just focus on the state level asset forfeiture. Philadelphia, if they only focus on the local asset forfeiture program, they're going to run into a lot of problems. In a few years, it is very likely, if they don't, we'll just see the asset forfeiture going exactly as it was, maybe even worse than it is now. Because what they're going to do, the police will learn very quickly. They'll probably get a call from someone at the DOJ and say, hey, just give us a call. We're here. You get 80%. It's just crazy how bad this robbery goes. So Again, I wanted to mention that there were a number of states that have been doing this, and where we report on this type of thing, we're starting the process for the annual report. It's called the State of the Nullification Movement Report. I don't know if you've heard me talk about this in the past, but we do an annual report covering what's going on. We talk about our entire philosophy, how you can opt out or nullify federal programs, where the foundation comes from, the strategic advice that we got from people like Thomas Jefferson, James Madison. We even got a little Rothbard in there too in last year's report. But then we also cover how this is playing out in the states right now. And talking about asset forfeiture, and again, I will put this link in the show notes, both on YouTube and on BitChute. Real.video really truncates the amount of information you can put. So I just put the link to our website where you can find all the show notes as well. But on page 20 of the Nullification Movement Report, it's about a 80 page report that you can download for free. It's updated as of 2017. We'll have the 2018 one done near the end of the year or early next year to cover exactly what's going on. But on page 20, you'll see exactly what's going on. There have been a number of states that have done reforms but ignored the federal level, but a number of states that are also starting to address it. I think Colorado as well, and that's a real important thing to consider. Do we auto-send the report to our newsletter members? I believe we do. After you first sign up for a 10th Amendment Center newsletter, which is at 10thamendmentcenter.com/register, over a period of, I think it's like every 10 days or so for a month or so, you're going to get an automated update. Here's some further information. This helps you navigate our website. Of course, will you join us as a member? I think there's also even a survey in there. I haven't looked at it in a while, so I probably should check this out. And I believe in maybe the second email that goes out, you get a link to the State of the Nullification Movement Report. If not, I'm going to give myself a task to kind of review that to make sure that we're doing it. It is a very important document. I always talk about it in interviews. If you want to learn more about what we do, this is the free download that explains our strategy, explains our approach, the philosophical, the constitutional foundation, and then how we're putting it into practice right now. So to me, that's the most important thing for people to read on our website. Justin says we should consider free membership to vets. Yeah, I've thought about doing something like that, or also for students. I will definitely, we're doing some revamping of our members website. We're also in the process of relaunching our entire website. We've got part of it done, but it's something that to consider as we do the members section. Thank you, Justin. Will says, how do you think we can return to the Articles of Confederation at the federal level? I don't know. That's not something that I'm even working on, but maybe somebody else is. So that's really all I had to cover today. The quote of the day, I think this quote really covers what we're talking about here, because we're talking about government just taking property under this so-called asset forfeiture program. And John Dickinson, who many people called the penman of the revolution, he said this: let these truths be indelibly impressed on our minds, that we cannot be happy without being free, that we cannot be free without being secure in our property. So property rights is the foundation that at least Dickinson thought, the penman of the revolution. He was the lead writer of the revolution, is what many called him. Samuel Adams being the father of the American Revolution. But you cannot be free. You have to be, freedom brings you happiness, but you can't be free without property rights. And asset forfeiture, according to IJ, is the greatest threat to property rights today. We posted this on Twitter again. I will link this as well. I do want to thank all of you for tuning in. Will Johnson, Justin Bayola, I really appreciate all your comments and suggestions. I was reading that about the students as well. Aviator Tom, Dan Warsaw, and everyone who is watching live but not commenting or watching later on, please hit that like button, smash that like button, share the link to the video, leave some comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts about what we're talking about today, or if you've got ideas of things that you'd like me to cover in the future. And, of course, I hope you have a great Wednesday. We'll be back here on Friday morning, 9:30 a.m. Pacific time, and again next week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.